How often are you really checking your critical infrastructure and your critical servers? Now, of course, done manually, this task is probably impossible. But by configuring tools to monitor this for you and create alerts, you can make sure that nothing goes amiss. And this is what we look at in Knowledge Area K11, monitoring and alerting technologies, and how you can use them in DevOps.
If you're only managing a few systems, then perhaps you can go through and take a look at your Event Viewer service. Perhaps you can go through and look at your Task Manager. These are Windows tools that will allow you to be able to see what is happening on your system. And of course, on a Linux system, you can go through and use the journalctl command to make queries through to the combined logs. But the reality is, scaling up, this doesn't work. To manage a larger estate, you need monitoring tools. So, of course, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to find ourselves a Nagios monitoring tool and install that on Linux. Now, we're going to be looking at Nagios or Nagios, depending what you want to call it. But whatever you call it, it still is going to be a monitoring server. Well, we can go through and set up alerts and thresholds. And when those thresholds have been met, then the alerts are going to be fired. This way, you can monitor your estate relatively easily. You can monitor Linux systems and will monitor the Nagios service itself, but you can also monitor Windows servers, so you're not restricted just to your Linux estate. Now, here we are working at my glorious Ubuntu system. It's actually an Ubuntu desktop, but that's just because we have the graphical environment that's going to give me ease of access to Firefox to look at the Nagios website. So we need to carry out a few tasks. Of course, one of the first tasks is to get Nagios installed. But before we install it, we must make sure that our metadata about the packages available are updated. So that's our sudo and apt update. We can allow this to run through, and once it has then updated, we're ready then to install our software. So with this, I can clear my screen, and that's Control and L. And then I use sudo and apt, and would you believe it's install. -Y, so it doesn't prompt me for the install, and I can choose the package Nagios 4. Now, as it goes through, it might ask some questions. Here it's asking about the email configuration, the email server. So I can hit OK, and it's going to come up with a configuration, and I'm going to leave it as no configuration. We're not going to have email configured, although that would be ideal so we could send out email notifications. We won't need it for this demonstration system. With it installed, there's a few minor things I need to set up. The first is to make sure the Apache module is enabled for CGI. So sudo a2 nmod CGI. That's going to tell me that I need to restart the Apache server. So sudo systemctl restart and Apache 2 is the name of the service. So we're up and running as far as the CGI scripts inside of Nagios are concerned, but we do need to make sure that Nagios itself is monitoring the way that we want. It does monitor the local host by default, but we want to speed up the monitoring process. So I'm going to make sure that it monitors the disk space available on the root partition every 1 minute. And I'm going to go into the etc Nagios 4 objects, and then there's a local host configuration, and we're going to open this file up. It also gives us an opportunity to see the configuration. When we look at it, it shows me that it can act as a sample. So we're defining our host. Our host is a Linux server, so we can use the Linux server template. We've got the host name and its IP address. As we scroll on down, we're going to be able to see the group definition. And there is a group definition called Linux servers, and localhost is a member of that. We then define our services. So there's a service here where we're checking the availability of the host through ping. But what we want to take a look at is the root partition service, where we're checking the local disk space on our root file system. It would normally monitor this every 60 minutes, but I'm going to change to the normal check _ interval, and I'm going to set it to 1, so every 1 minute. Now, obviously, this is overkill for what you would normally want, but for us, we don't want to hang around an hour to see things happening. When we look at the check command, it's using the module check local disk and is reporting on 20% and 10%. So 20% would be a moderate warning, a critical warning if we get to less than 10%. So with the change made, we can go through and save our file. We can check the configuration is valid before we try and restart the service. And that's always a good idea, isn't it? So if we run through and sudo Nagios and 4, we can go through and run -v to validate. And then if we put to the central configuration file, that includes everything else. So /etc/Nagios 4, and then our nagios.cfg, and hit the big enter key. And look at this, I've got a spelling mistake. So let's make sure we spell sudo correctly. And looking through that, it's found our host, it's found our host group. It hasn't found any errors, so we are good to go. And I can restart the Nagios 4 service. And now we're ready to monitor our site. So you can see I've got Firefox open already, and I can then navigate through to the local host and /Nagios 4. And we can allow the page to fire up. And this is then our monitoring site. We can move through to our services. And from our services, then we can see the 8 services that are here by default. And everything is colored green. So this is good. We can see then that we are up and running with our load, our root file system, our host availability. But if I move out to my command line, and if I start filling up the root file system, but first off, let's go through and actually see how much space we have available. And we can see that we've got 14 gig available, having used 54% of our disk space. Okay, well, let's create a large file. The easiest way to do this is with file allocate or fallocate, the length, the -L, and I'll create a 12 gig file, and I'm just going to call it my file. It allocates the space but doesn't write anything to disk. So it will show as being in use, and we can see now that we're 96% in use with only 1.5 gig available. Now, it doesn't change straight away. For one thing, the Nagios web page only updates every 90 seconds, and we wait 1 minute before we run any tests. So we're running our test every minute, but we have to wait to a minute after the last time it was run, and we have to wait 1.5 minutes for the web page to update. So it will update. We just need to wait for it. So I'm not doing anything with the mouse. I'm not clicking anything on the web page. I'm just going to allow the page to update itself. And this often would be displayed on a big screen in your DevOps room. And there you go. Everybody is starting to panic now because we've got a critical error on a server and we're running out of disk space. So everybody starts running around like headless chickens, but hopefully in the right direction. Let's tidy up the space so I can delete the file, and then that shows me again of having plenty of space available, so 14 gig. Now, of course, this isn't immediately going to change in Nagios, but we should be comfortable now that within 1.5 minutes or 90 seconds, our web page is going to refresh and it is going to show the green status of OK again. So we can allow this to run through. Again, I'm not refreshing anything on the page. We're just allowing the 90 seconds to run through, and we should get a lovely green feeling coming back all over our web page. So we've installed Nagios. We've looked at monitoring Nagios, and we've seen how Nagios then can automate the process of allowing us to know about thresholds that have been met. We can configure those thresholds, and we can configure how often we check for those thresholds being met. You can see now that our page has updated, so people are more relaxed. We've gone back to a green status. In this module, we've taken you through Knowledge Area K11, monitoring and alerting technologies, and awareness of the insights that can be derived from the infrastructure and application, collecting logs and metrics, configuring alerting thresholds, firing alerts, and visualizing data.
All that is left to say is thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this, then you are probably sadder than I first thought. For more of this drivel, please subscribe, like and comment to @TheUrbanPenguin.